What made you want to become an entrepreneur?
I got fired from the United Nations, and that forced me to transition from being a part-time business owner, having a few income streams, to full-time having to make money for my family. So that's what forced me into full-time entrepreneurship. Clearly, while I was at the United Nations, I had this bug in me, and I had started a few businesses. So I had some knack in there, and I wanted to be a rabble-rouser and do something. But I think when I left full-time employment, like many people are going through even today, that kind of pushed me over the edge to either sink or swim. And by God's grace, I was able to swim.
And you said you had the entrepreneurship bug. How did you get started with that?
Well, the first small company I had was a technology consulting company, and that was helping people set up their computers, network their computers, installing software, upgrading their computers, things like that. This would have been about 20 years ago. So in the early 90s, I guess it would have been, if my math serves me correctly. And it wasn't, again, we all throw the word entrepreneur around. For me, it wasn't entrepreneur so much. It was just, I was a guy, somebody had a problem, and they paid me to solve it. So that was kind of how that started. And over time, as I learned, of course, reading Inc. magazine, reading Black Enterprise, going to events and sucking in knowledge, I realized kind of, okay, this is business ownership. And in late days, we've used the word entrepreneur. Back then, it was more of I was just a business owner, figuring out, how do I get my first business bank account? How do I get a DBA? Today, of course, we have LLCs or S Corp, but back then it was like, how do I get my first bank account? That's how it started back then.
So you mentioned that you were working at the UN. How dedicated were you to your personal business? And then how did that change?
Yeah, well, I saw that that the UN was really my side job, even though I was there full time, but I saw it as my side gig more so. And I was all in, fully dedicated to my, what they would term outside ventures, for sure. That's what I love. My passion was speaking and presenting and performing. And the UN was more of a roadblock to get there, but I'm very grateful for it, because the UN, two things, was enable me to provide for my family. I made a good salary, and two, I learned quite a bit, a professional environment, seeing the world, seeing we talk about diversity today so much. You can't get more diverse than the United Nations. A Japanese gal speaking French, a French guy who was, raised in Nigeria, and a Nigerian who speaks fluent Spanish. You can't get more diverse than that. So learned quite a bit.
And when you first started your tech consulting business, were you mentored or helped by anyone?
Yeah, I mean, if I would say no, that would be for any of these things, my entire journey. I think all successful business owners have some form of mentorship, whether they're paying for a coach, whether they're reading, whether they're getting, free insight from videos, or whether it's a one-to-one. But I can think fondly of my friend Yakov Urinsky, who today owns or Orion Global Solutions. He was really instrumental back in the day, allowing me to be in his office, cry on his shoulder, and just observe how he built his business. So that was kind of a mentor of the day. And even within the UN, a gentleman who's now passed away, his name is Chidambaranathan. He was kind of, and again, it's funny, today we talk about mindset. 20 years ago, I'm sure those terms are used, but I don't recall the words being used like we do today. But he's the one who, in his thick Indian accent, Ramon, slow down, you're moving too fast. Or Ramon, don't write the email today. You're angry. Write it tomorrow when you can have a clear mind. So that was, I guess he was my Tony Robbins, or my whoever of the day would be back then. And I love him very much.
So would you ever consider being a mentor to other young entrepreneurs?
Yes, I love mentorship. I love helping people. In fact, there's about 5 to 7 young men. I just use the power of, WhatsApp and just sending them voice messages and check in. How are you? How you doing? We talk. So I guess you can say mentoring them, but also it's not just I'm the big grandfather imparting wisdom. It's just chilling. It's how can I help? How can I serve? And they impart to me, because part of that, I think we all are starting in our journeys. And we all have questions. Ramon, let me ask you about this. Let me ask you this. And these young men who I talk to are smart. They have their own answers and decisions, but sometimes you want validation, or sometimes, Ramon said that. Let me chew on that. Maybe the way I was going about it was the wrong way. So yes, I covet mentorship. And anybody listening to this right now, if you need help, you have a question, connect with me anytime. It's a pleasure. And yes, I think we're obligated, those of us who are older, who've gone on the journey. It's a pleasure to do that. Yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure there are people listening right now who will absolutely take you up on that advice.
And hopefully they'll use your system to do it.
Absolutely. That's what we're built for. So when you first started, did you know that you were going to reach this goal? And have you reached your goal? Or is it a continuous process?
And I would ask, what is the goal? Which goal are you referring to? But to answer my own question, I will answer my own question. No, I haven't reached. I don't have a goal. And so no, I haven't reached a goal. I think for me, my business and money are vehicles to provide for my family. I have 2 adult children, so they're a little more independent than if they were smaller, but and enable me and my wife to live the life we want. And 2, to provide and support and contribute to our community. That's what life is about on this earth. And so I think that for me, I will never arrive, until I'm dead and we have, life after this time here on earth. But no, I don't think I'll ever arrive. I think that there's no number you can have. There's not amount of this or amount of that, because again, for me, business and money is a vehicle to serve others, and to live an enjoyable life, however I may define that enjoyment. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever arrive. Having said that, though, I do think that, if I use the word arrived to mean maybe you don't worry about retirement anymore. If I use the word arrive to mean you can buy some more cooler toys. No, I'm still in the game and hustle, figuring out my kind of, if I had to put a number of what it may mean to retire comfortably, as it were. So I think I'll speak to 2 sides of that. So if that's helpful, hope it wasn't too confusing.
So this is a bit of an open-ended question, but how long did it take you to get to this point? You said you started your own businesses in the late 90s, but I am sure that you also learned quite a bit beforehand.
Yeah, I would say about 20 years or so, meaning I think my first domain was started, I want to say 1999, but 1999 would have been 20 years, because my first domain, smallbiztechnology.com, and I sold that company 20 years ago to the date. So it would have been 2019 I sold it. So yeah, this has been, as using that as a data point, yeah, about a 20-year journey, I think, if my math is correct. So it's been a while doing this. And I think, hats off to Dave Ramsey and others who say these kind of things. They say, yeah, we're an overnight success doing it for 20 years. Dave Ramsey says that or something like that. So for me, do we have a $1 billion company and millions of dollars of exits? No, that's not my, and I'll thank you. I'll take your words. That's not my success. But I think my success is if I started a few businesses, helped people, living the life I want, paying myself well, paying a team, paying others, right? And able to have some time to mentor and help others. Yeah, I'll call that a success for sure.
Back in the 90s, would you say that you were helped with a lot of technology? Because right now it's very easy for people to use Google or to use Bing and to look things up and to basically live online. Would you say that you had access to that?
I think I'll say it in phases. So I started out using Prodigy. Probably half your audience doesn't know it. Everybody will know AOL. That was my beginning to the internet. I don't know if we even called it the internet then. We just called it AOL or Prodigy. And then online bulletin board systems, the dial-up modem, fax machines, right? I would call the IRS and learn things. You punch in, please punch in code 425 to get the fax to you, how to start an LLC. That was the tech we had then. Then building the first website, Microsoft Front Page, I think Adobe Dreamweaver, I'm not sure, would have been technologies people used to create their first websites. We didn't have, Shopify and Squarespace and tools like that there back then. So I think that, yes, technology was used quite a bit then. But I think the most basic technology that really helped me quite a bit was my email newsletter. I had an email newsletter, built a nice email list using some tools back then. So email's been around for a while. And that was really we didn't have all the tools we have today, the services by your amazing company for sure. But I think we still had email and basic websites, and that's where I had started my career. And right before me would have been the Zig Ziglars using cassette tapes, right, and late night television. And then the second thing I will say, Peter, though, was events. And this was a little later on, but in 2005 is when I had the first idea for my first event, and so event marketing and et cetera was a big way that I had grown my brand over the years. So, but to answer the question, technology was a help then, yes, but definitely not like it is today, where web-based services, you just spin them up, pay a monthly fee, and away you go.
So, do you ever track your long-term goals or your short-term to-dos in any way?
I should have. Back then, I did not. I was just really in the hustle phase of just growing. But to your point, I must say that I used to think that vision boards were sissy, take it however you want. But I'll use that word. But the point is, I recently, just about a year or two ago, wrote down 3 goals I wanted to accomplish. And that was, I look at my wall right now, no debt, more pay, more giving. I've accomplished those things. So, yeah, so it's a kind of roundabout way of answering your question. No, when I was, I'm almost 50. When I was a younger business owner, did I write down goals and where I want to be? I wish I had. I didn't. My only goal back then probably was I really wanted to be in the counter assault team of the United States Secret Service. And when I was a child, I wanted to be in the FBI. So kind of, cousins. But no, didn't really write down goals. I should have.
So along your entrepreneurial journey, what was the best advice you ever received?
Probably wasn't one piece of advice. I think that I've received so much advice over the years that calling out one would be so unfair. And I think that really just when I think back to, I'll shout out a few other names, Bo Burlingham's book, Small Giants, just giving that inspiration and fire that you don't have to build a big multi-billion-dollar company to be a success. Thinking of Norm Brodsky, a columnist and business owner right now in Brooklyn over the years, who's inspired so many business owners by his columns in magazines. That was my inspiration. That was my advice over time. So not one piece of advice, one thing. But I must say, the piece of advice I've received, and this is only of recent, the past few weeks. So I wish I could say it was my journey which got me to the success that I've had today, but it was being content. And for me, the power of the word content is twofold. Content does not mean that you don't have visions to go higher. You don't have visions to grow. No. And content does not mean that you're satisfied where you are with mediocrity. But content means you're content. That means you don't have this rush, this jealousy, this anxiousness, this covetousness, and the problem I've had, this throwing spaghetti against the wall. Spaghetti, the Spanish word, I think and I'm not Hispanic, but cuidad means like slow down, like they'll tell children, despacio, calm down. So that's what I found, and it's only been of recent, is the aspect of being content. And it's helped me quite a bit, even today, as I continue to grow as an entrepreneur and as a business owner.
What advice would you give to yourself when you just started?
Wow. I'd probably give a lot of advice. I would say, 1, be strategic, be thoughtful, probably have some sort of a plan in place and don't just do things scatterbrained all over. And I think I'm happy with how things have gone. The advice, meaning I'll repeat, how if I live my life, enjoy the moment. Don't let perfection stop you. And that's not been my problem, but some people it may be that. So those are a few words of advice I'd probably give looking back to my younger self.
Yep, absolutely. And would you do this again? Would you be an entrepreneur again?
All day long. Absolutely, unequivocally, yes.
And what was your largest obstacle and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest obstacle probably is lack of financial planning and management, just spending and hoping things will happen. That's probably what the biggest obstacle was, I think, for me. Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest. And then and other things, of course, probably moving. And I think the cousin to that it probably happened because moving too fast, not taking time to think and plan. So you don't want to go too far and have perfection stop you because you'll never start. On the other hand, you don't want to be too cavalier and too careless and just rush ahead and not proceed. So those are two things.
So how do you collaborate with others, people who work for you, other family members, everything like that?
Well, let me split that question then, because and you can do a follow-up if I didn't answer it right. But if you're talking about family members, not so much I consider that collaboration per se. My wife and kids, that's just family, and you just go on day to day and love life together, right? Play ball, have barbecues, whatever. So, but regarding business collaboration, I think I am always looking for that. We can only do so much by ourselves. Ramon does one or two things in smarthustle.com, my company, very well. I'm a speaker, a global speaker. So that's the talent God's given me, to fly around the world and inspire people and have fun with stages and thousands of people all over the world. That's one thing I do well. Two, I vision pretty well. I can dream stuff, man. I can dream like crazy, and I can see the pieces falling in place. Probably third thing I do very well is sell. I'm pretty good selling, and that's because based on a personality test I've taken, I'm pretty good at woo and connecting with people, listening to people. Those are three things I do well. Everything else, though, I need help with. Like, I have a great executive assistant. She helps me with my day. She helps me think. She helps me say, Ramon, you can do it better this way. Be more strategic. My content manager. So my point being is that I love collaborations, because I think we can't do things alone. And there's always somebody that does something better than you or different than you, or can help you. You can help each other scale to take your strengths or your communities and build more with it.
So do you journal your experiences or record them in any other way?
I know journaling is good to do, and I think people who journal are very, very successful, because you can go back and remember what you've done. Now, one thing that I do definitely is try to take notes of calls, and that may sound, Ramon, that's obvious, but even that is a part of journaling. Is a part of let me just take notes on a call so I can remember it. I can go back to it, help me remember it. So I'm an advocate of journaling in some way, shape, or form. Some people are more disciplined. Every day before I go to bed, I journal. Some people are not. But I think I'm a very strong proponent. I think journaling can help you focus, can help you remember, can help discipline your mind.
And how do you keep organized? Do you keep digital notes, to-do lists? What's your process?
Yes to everything you just said.
Notes and to-dos?
Everything. All that you just said. No, a variety of digital tools and lists and et cetera, and paper and all over the place. So yes, I keep track using a variety of tools. Definitely to keep track of whether it's the business, whether it's Ramon, whether tools on my phone, things of that nature, for sure. And I think it's important, because I think as you get, some people have a photographic and a perfect memory, but I think the more as you get busier and busier, you need help prioritizing, help tracking, help remembering, and then some things you're archiving, which you don't need to know today, but next year you may want to remember.
Last question, kind of broad, but what advice would you give anyone on how to be successful?
Wow. That is a broad question, but I think a few things I would say how to be successful. Know your strengths. Know what you do very well and hone in on that. Understand what you're weak at or not so good at, and don't try necessarily to make that better. You want to be a little better. You want to improve. You don't want to be a jerk. But God's given us talents, and usually we can maximize those. LeBron playing ball, I'm sure other things, or Michael Phelps swimming, right? These are just example of sports. But focus on that. Two, I think always seek, how can I serve? And not in some corny networking way, but generally speaking, how can I serve the other person I'm working with? How can I make their life easier? How can I help them complete their goals through what they're asking of me? I think that's point two. And I think that's how you can be successful, because success comes in many different ways. I think of my two children. One is a full-time teacher. She's doing amazing work teaching children, changing their lives. As you know, teachers don't make a lot of money. Teachers are the not the glamorous side of the world, but so important. My son's decided to go another route. He's a life coach, and he's changing lives in his way, and his struggles are different than his sisters. But I think both are successful, and both will continue to be more successful if you talk about money and career advancement, et cetera. So I think focus on your strengths and focus on how you can serve others. And one other thing I say to young people is that work hard, have a great attitude, and always seek to learn. You'll be success.
Great. That's going to really help people out. And that was the last question. Thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for providing this platform for people. Really excited about that and all that we learned. And as I said, let me know how I can help you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.